Thank you. I'm going to start with the simple question, is Google making us stupider? And then talk just a little about the financial crisis, and then try to explain and predict the entire future of politics, economics, and liberty in about half an hour's time. To start with the question, is Google making us stupider? This is the title of a famous article by Nicholas Carr. And I think basically, no, Google is not making us stupider. But let me first admit, there are some people out there, maybe even some in this audience, that Google is making us stupider, a few of us. So this 88-year-old kook who did the shooting at the Holocaust Museum, he did a lot of stuff on the web, and it seemed it egged him on to do some pretty stupid and evil things. So my point is not that there are no problems, but rather there's a pretty simple model for understanding how it is in general that Google is not making us stupider. The common complaint about Google is that it somehow shortens our attention span, or it feeds us information in smaller and smaller bits. And it's as if we all become some kind of example of a person with attention deficit disorder. As if we wake up in the morning, the first thing we do is press the I'm feeling lucky button on Google, see what it takes us to. We read that, then we go off and we read something totally different, and we just run around in circles all day. That's not how most people use Google. The way most people use Google is to follow long-running stories of personal interest. And maybe the story is what's going on in the economics profession, or what's the latest research on global warming, or what's the new book on Charles Darwin, or what my 7 best friends are writing on their blogs. But Google mostly is getting us more interested in the long term, and it's making the long term easier to follow. So there's something a bit counterintuitive about this. What we're getting are smaller bits of information at our disposal more readily. But what we do with those smaller bits is use them to construct narratives of long-term interest. And it's never been easier than now to follow some kind of long-run problem or story or issue or question or a person's life. If I think of myself, I'm now 47 years old. The former rock star, Roger McGuinn, I've actually been following him for 34 years, like since I was 13. It used to be really hard to do. Like I'd take a bus into New York, and I'd get a copy of the Village Voice, and then I'd turn to every page, and maybe he would be playing somewhere. Maybe for a few years I could subscribe to some obscure fanzine, and then it would go out of business, and I'd be back to being stranded. I'd browse record stores, and every now and then a new record would appear, and I would buy it, bring it home, and it'd get all scratched up, and then I'd buy another one. It was really inefficient, but now if I want to read Roger McGuinn's Twitter feed, it's quite easy to do, and furthermore, it's completely free. So my basic model of what's going on today is that we're getting a lot of goodies. Most of the goodies are free. Maybe you have to buy an internet connection, but at the margin, most of the goodies are free. And for the most part, the goodies are making us a lot smarter, and they're also entertaining us a lot better. There's a reason why so much has shifted onto the web in, say, the last 10 years, and it's because people find the web a medium that's entertaining, educating, and useful. It's probably the single largest cultural shift in the history of the human race, if you measure it in terms of speed. Even something like fire or speech or the printing press, it took those developments a long time before they really circulated, were internalized, made things more productive. But if you look at the web, it's taken 10 years. If you talk about blogging, I've now been blogging 6 years, and I'm considered an old-timer. A few of us will get around and talk about the good old days, in blogging, and that's 6 years. So the speed of these developments is really quite astonishing. But there are a lot of pitfalls, and these developments, I think, are changing the very way we think about economics and eventually politics. And I want to talk about the implications of this for liberty. To give you just a very simple example, take something like Twitter. How many of you here either use or experiment with Twitter? Show of hands. A fair number of you, and I'll predict that at least half of you who didn't put up your hands will start trying it within the next 6 months to a year. Now, maybe Twitter won't be the thing that sticks, but something like Twitter will stick, just like Facebook has stuck, or maybe Facebook will be replaced by something better. But there's an interesting fact about Twitter. According to the company itself, as of this March, although millions of people are using Twitter, How many employees does Twitter have, according to Twitter? The number is about 30. So we have an institution. It touches millions of American or global lives. It's used to track all kinds of ongoing events to keep up with people, and it's employing 30 people. The number of people who work at Facebook is more than 30, but given the enormous reach of Facebook, that number is, again, really quite small. So what we're seeing is this very sudden shift in how productivity improvements enter the global and especially the US economy. That there are a number of areas where productivity is rising very intensely, very rapidly, in a very surprising way. And the form of those productivity shocks is to give us something for free, or nearly for free, and also not to employ a large number of people. And if you ask how much revenue is Twitter generating, basically the answer, a rounding error, it's zero. How much revenue is Facebook generating? It's more than zero. But relative to its reach, essentially, again, you're back at it being zero. So this is a huge surprise, the notion that all of a sudden our big productivity gains would come in a form that yields revenue essentially of zero. And this will have very important economic implications. But there's a growing divergence between what produces revenue, including tax revenue, and what makes people better off. Because Twitter, Facebook, Google, they make a lot of people a lot better off. Now, Google doesn't have a revenue stream of zero, but think of Google as a kind of bundle. There are the ads, which have a pretty big revenue stream. Google's worth a lot of money. And then there's the search. The search itself has no revenue stream attached to it. So you capture revenue from the ads, but not revenue from the search. So the real true productivity reach of Google is, again, much, much greater than the associated revenue stream.